good morning and welcome to Practical BAT. This particular session is about using BAT to standardize fields that aren't a checkbox or a drop-down list. So things like description or line appearance association. That's where we're headed with this. Oops. So custom sets of changes. What you're going to end up doing with something like this, you're not going to use a query. Queries are great, again, if I'm going to do a checkbox kind of thing, or if I'm going to do a drop-down kind of thing. But if I'm going to be editing description fields, you have to use a file. You have to have a file, because you're going to have the, user account, user ID, or the MAC address or device name or whatever associated with then another column, which is the field you want to update. And so you can do this with any editable user field. The example I'm going to be using in the lab here is, excuse me, what about the home cluster checkbox? The home cluster checkbox is a great example of I need some people to have the home cluster checkbox checked, and I have other people I need to not have the home cluster checkbox checked. And maybe I have a multi-cluster environment. My Jabber clients need to make sure that that checkbox is consistent for all users. So how do I do that? Also, device fields and line fields, things like the description or the alerting name or the display, the caller ID, right? I had somebody in one of my sessions yesterday who was asking about that very thing. Like their phones don't really move, their phones don't really change, but they have a fairly high turnover of people. So when, Bob leaves and Sue comes and takes Bob's desk and Bob's phone, how do I change Bob's phone on a consistent basis into Sue's phone? It's going to have the same number, right? And it's going to have the same MAC address and all the same, the calling search space and the phone buttons, all that stuff. But what I need to change is description, owner, line appearance association for presence information, line level description, line level alerting, line level display. These sorts of text kinds of fields. And especially if you're doing a bunch of different people at the same time, obviously all of that information is different. So how do we do that? In this same way that I'm going to be showing you, you can also do bulk add, modify of phone services, lines, intercoms. I mean, there's lots of things you can do with this sort of stuff. And there's two basic ways. If you have a relatively small, and I mean under 1,000 objects that you need to edit, then you can use the direct edit method I'm going to show you right now. If you have a large number, you want to export every single phone in your database and you've got 17,000. And then you want to go through and you want to update the description field and make sure that for every single phone of your 17,000 phones, the description field is in a standard format. And then import that information. That's a little different. We're going to be talking about using the import-export feature of Call Manager later, and that is how you would do large numbers like that. So the examples we're going to use today, I'm going to show you how to do that home cluster checkbox business. I'm also going to walk through, and I did this yesterday, for those of you who attended yesterday in the Q&A session after the session yesterday, is what's sort of the process? I need to add a particular set of speed dials and or abbreviated dials to a set of phones. And this came out of a student question. They worked for a county and they wanted to have, and I don't know why they didn't just set up translation patterns for everybody, but whatever, enterprise alternate numbers, excuse me. But they wanted to have a common set of abbreviated dials, the same, I think it was 63 of them on every single phone. And they were department numbers really. And so, how do I deploy that kind of a list of 63 different abbreviated dials on all of my phones? How do I do that? So we're going to look at how to do that. And then editing the description field on a set of devices. Again, we're talking about a set, not every single device, but just a certain set of devices. So here's where we're going. Now, before we get started, does anybody have any questions, anything they'd like to ask or talk about? So, oh, and I should say too, So Zoom has a chat session. Oh, I didn't introduce myself either, did I? Zoom has a chat session. So feel free to throw a question up in chat. If it's something that we need to have a conversation on, I can always unmute your microphone and we can have a conversation about that too. And oh, by the way, since I'm thinking about it, right? One more. There we go. So this is me. I'm Maureen Mahoney. I'm a senior instructor here at Sunset Learning. I've been teaching for Sunset Learning for about 12 years, but I do consulting on the side to sort of keep my feet in the fire, as it were. And my primary specialty is collaboration, but I do have experience and certifications in other areas as well. So if you have related questions, feel free to ask them. If I don't know the answer, I can certainly figure it out. Okay, so our first task is going to be, how do I see to it that the home cluster checkbox is consistent for a set of users? And here is what we're going to do. So I have a call manager here. Let me log in. And what we're going to do is actually export our existing users. The easiest way to modify information that's user information is to export the existing set of users and then just do a re-import. And again, for us, this is going to be a relatively small group. If you need to do every single user in your organization, again, if you have many thousands, you'll want to do the import-export feature. And here we go. Bulk administration tool. Now, yesterday when we were working with the bulk edit feature, we were working with phones and directory numbers. Here I'm going to start working with user accounts, but the basic process is the same. What I would like to do is export my users. And first I have to decide on the set of users. And it'll say this when this comes up, but you can only generate a list of up to 1,000 with this. But part of the reason this is helpful too is, remember when we were talking about the multi-argument query, right? Oh, it's just folks at the Chicago office that I need to edit their user accounts, or it's just the people whose last names began with B because I did an import and I messed something up and I need to fix it, or whatever. So smaller groups. For me, I'm going to just go grab everybody and I'm going to click next. And file name and file format. I am going to do the all user format, and that means I want to get every field about all of my users. There is also a default user format. Let me show you the default user format first. What information do I see? When I do the export, what fields am I exporting? If I select this here and I click on View File Format, it's going to tell me the list of header fields, or the list of columns, the sets of data I'm going to be exporting. So first name, last name, display name, user ID, blah, 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 blah. Now, local telephone number, controlled devices, PIN, right? So notice that what I don't have here are things like what end user access control group should they be in? Or are they enabled for extension mobility? That sort of thing. So, that's not there. I'm going to go ahead and close this. Instead, I'm going to go grab all user format. And for the record, it's possible to create your own file format if you have a specific set of data that you would like to be able to import and export. The all user format gives me absolutely everything. And that includes, let me see if I can find it here. Access control group, control profile. It's in here somewhere. I'll tell you what, let me just try find. Home. There we are, home cluster. So home cluster. What's the status of that checkbox? Now this is a lot of data. This is a perfect example of when I might want to create a custom format, and I can upload that into Call Manager, and if I do, then I can select it here. So it's just a matter of creating it. I'm going to do all user format, and I'm going to say all users, all data. And I'm going to go ahead and run this immediately. Now I only have 40 users, so this job shouldn't take too long. But while I'm at it, How do I create one of those custom file formats? Well, the deal is that what you would do is create a text file that included the headers that you want. You know, we saw that, that file format here, right? Let me go grab a different one. While the job is processing, I'm just going to talk about this briefly. Come on, there we are. So if I do like the default user format, for instance. So what you need in your text file, and update, and update. There we go. What you would need is this list of headers. They are comma separated values. You would upload it as a TXT file, but you'd want the commas there. And once you have your set of data that you would like to upload, then I can upload a file. Add new. I would be dealing with user accounts, and I would be, I'm sorry, wrong one. Did they take this away? I could be mistaken. They may have changed this. This allows me to update users via a custom file, but I guess you can't create your own. You used to be able to create your own custom file formats for users. Well, okay, love that. All right, regardless, let us go and find our file that we downloaded. Here's my all users, all data, download, save as, and I'm gonna just put it on the desktop here. And let me go ahead and open this in Excel. Excel is around here somewhere. There we are. Now I've downloaded, for those of you not familiar with this particular process in Excel, I have created a text file with comma separated values, and I need to tell Excel about that. So I'm going to go get all files. Here's my all users, all data file. I showed you this yesterday if you came yesterday too. And it's delimited. Is it delimited with tabs? Is it delimited with what? I'm going to click next here and tell it what the delimiter is. Delimiter is not tabs. And watch what happens in the display field here. As soon as I click comma, now it's showing me that I'm going to have all these nice tidy columns. There we go. Now, E164 formatting. Give me just a second. I need to cough. Please excuse me. Okay, so you'll notice that it has changed my telephone numbers from E164 format into this weird thing here. So how can I fix that in Excel? What happened to my plus? Well, what's happened is that Excel has seen the plus as a programmable character. I can see my primary extension here, and it already has the slash in front of it, but I can't do that with straight up telephone number. I need to have that plus. So one of the things I can do then, excuse me, is I can change my file format. So I'm going to format my cells. I'm going to do a custom Excel format. And the format I need to do, what I need to do is say, well, hey, I need to have you recognize the following kinds of fields. And where's my code? I need to add a new one. Okay. Excel format custom. I'll show you that later. I got to remember how to do that. Because there's a, oh, there we are. Ha, I knew there was a way to do this. Okay, plus, I needed to recognize the plus as a thing. I needed to recognize the pound as a thing. Think about pauses in things like speed dials or at the end of international numbers. I need to have a space, and the other thing I needed to recognize is a slash. Now, slashes, again, in Excel are programmable fields, so I'm going to do question mark slash question mark, and what that does, it says, oh, and oh, by the way, this field also, so that kind of slash. And I do, so do OK. Notice that my pluses came back. It now recognizes that not as a programmable character, but as part of my text. So just FYI on how to do that. Okay, let's go find the home cluster checkbox. Here we are, home cluster checkbox. And I can see that some are true and some are false. And you might be thinking to yourself, well, gee, you know, how do I know which ones should be true and which ones should be false? Consider, only folks that have a Jabber client, a CSF device, should have a home cluster checkbox checked. So let me do a search. Let me find all of the users who have associated with their account a CSF device. So what I would like to do is I would like to sort. I need to go find the associated devices. Here we are. And what I need to do is filter. And on here, I need anything that's CSF. Right? There's other ways to do this, includes, and let's see. Oh, I see. Actually, let me do this. I forgot that I can do that. So text filters contains CSF. Right, okay. Now, notice I have a filter here. What this is doing is showing me just these items, and I need to make sure that for these users, the home cluster checkbox is enabled. So I need all of these to be true. Ta-da. And now I can go back. Where's my control devices? And now I can go back and get rid of my filter. And I can say maybe does not contain CSF. And for all of these users, my home cluster checkbox, all of these users, it needs to be false. Okay, so now I'm going to get rid of my filter altogether. And now I see all of my users, and I see that some are true and some are false, and I have all of my users here. So I'm going to save this data. Actually, let me do a save as file, save as. And I'm going to call this all users, all data, fixed home cluster checkbox. And if I look at that, just like in Notepad++, I see a question there. Do we have to import all users back in, or just the users we modified? Just the users you modified, but you would have to figure out which ones those are. In our particular case, we modified a bunch of users, so I would import everybody, but that's just me. Now, I do see a problem here. When Excel exported this, it exported it as a exported it as a text field and not as a CSV. So let me. I screwed that up. I'd have to go back in and redo this. Forgive me, I made a mistake there. When you do a save as, you would want to do a save as with as a CSV file. Then it would include the commas, and the commas, as you can see, are all gone. I wonder if I could just rename it and it would work. Rename, excuse me. But no, but I think I've messed it up. Yeah, it's all text now. Anyway, so hopefully you see the process, because the biggest process is extracting the data and editing the data. What I would do at that point, so let me open this Excel again. And I'll just change a couple. Delimited with commas. And, oh crap, see, it changed my telephone numbers again. I'd have to go fix that. Oops, sorry. Format cells, custom, with my special thing I added. And what did I say? Plus pound. There we are. There you go. Okay. Excuse me. So home cluster checkbox. Let me just go ahead and, for kicks, I'm going to just select a bunch and make them all true. And let me go grab that question. I usually import all columns as text in Excel. Even with that, I agree, because the easy thing to do would be to select the entire thing and just make it all text, right? Format cells, and you make everything general text. But I find that that doesn't see my self-service ID. It's already edited that. So I find that that doesn't always work. But I hear what you're saying. So once I have the data, I'm going to not save here. Once I have the data, now I'm going to go back into Call Manager, and I'm going to upload a file. Oh, I'm right there. Duh. So add new. And I'm going to go get all users, all data again. Now this is the same file, so it's not going to make any changes, but I want to just show you the process. What I'm going to be doing here is updating users' custom file. We exported users earlier. Now I'm going to be updating it. This uploads this file to the specific spot it needs to be in order for me to update the data. Bulk administration tool, users, update users, custom file. I select my custom file. I need to have a template name. Now I have to select a template, but keep in mind that my all users information has every single field in the user account, so I don't have to worry about it. It'll overwrite anything in the template and run immediately. Ta-da. And that's how you do that. Again, because I messed up with that one, that not exporting it as CSV, I can't prove to you that it worked, but trust me, it worked. So home cluster checkbox. For those of you who have more than one cluster, the consistency of that home cluster checkbox is absolutely critical in making your Jabber clients work. So that one's a really important one. The next thing I want to do, now I did the speed dials thing yesterday, so I don't necessarily want to do that again. I'll do that later on, but there's a couple of other things I want to show you. So what about the description field? That's another one of those things where it's a text field. I want to make it consistent. The most common way is to do a straight up export of all of your phones. And that includes all the phone level and all the line level fields, and then go in and start making things consistent. But what if, again, I just need to do a smaller group? Similar kind of thing. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go in to my phones, and I'm going to export phones specific details. Now, in order to have specific details, I need to tell it what details I want. And that means find. Again, I'm going to just go get everybody for now. There we go. File format. I would need to have had the file format ready. So how do I do that? Again, if you were with us yesterday when we did the speed dials thing, how do I go about that? I go to Bulk Administration Tool, Phones, and File Format. I'm going to create a file format, Add New, and I'm going to call this All Name Related Fields. And on the device level, I would want always device name and description. Are there any other fields you would need? You might need owner, for instance, because that's going to need to change when a user comes in. So let me go get owner. Now that is part of a drop-down list, but is something that would need to be customizable. On the line level, I would need certainly, let's start with directory number and partition. I think this is where it's called route partition, if I'm not mistaken. Yep, route partition. And that way I make sure I have the right directory numbers and all that. But then I'm going to need things like alerting name. I'm going to need display name. Alerting name is up top. Display name is a little bit further down. I would need description. I think it's line description, if I'm not mistaken. Yep. And that one I'm going to put up right underneath route partition. So these three fields are name-related fields. They're on the directory number. If you also are filling in the ASCII fields for alerting name and display, you would want to make sure that you have those in there too. There. So on my phone, I have this set of information. On my lines, I have this set of information. I am going to go ahead and save. Oh, and maximum number of lines. So if I have more than one line, I'm going to only do one line in mine just to make my life easier. But it allows you to, if you have more than one directory number on a phone, more than one line appearance, to have multiples of that. So my add is successful. I now have that field, so I should be able to go get that file format or go view that file format. What was I just doing? Update, it was an update phone's custom file. Oh no, file format, I'm sorry, here we are. We created file format. I need to update phones based on a custom file. Sorry, I'm having a moment here. We created our file format. I was just here a second ago. We're not updating phones via a query. We did that yesterday. I'm sorry, I'm having a senior moment here. We created our file format because we're going to update phones via a custom file format. And where is my stuff? All right, you know what? I'll come back to that because I'm sure it'll come to me. Here's the third example I wanted to show you. Forgive me, and what I will do is when I post the video for this, I'll have the specific instructions because I did this in the Cisco webinar and I didn't have a problem. I can't remember what I'm forgetting. If anybody knows, let me know. Speaking of Jabber, another thing that needs to be true is that the line appearances, the directory numbers, line appearances on a phone have to be associated with the user. Now, step one would be to make sure that your users have device associations in the end user account. And obviously they're going to own their phones. But what about the line appearance association? And what I'm talking about is if I go into a phone and I go into a specific line appearance, I'm talking about this. For presence purposes, whether or not this particular user's on this line on their phone changes their presence information. So how do I get that to be associated? I don't want to export and import all my phones because that's, that's really dangerous. So is there any way I can just say, hey, go do this? Yes, and it is super easy. This is like one of the easiest things I've ever seen. I love this. In the bulk administration tool, under users, I am going to export line appearances. And what this is doing is it's saying, hey, for all of the associated devices for all of my users, give me a list of all of their associated directory numbers. Next. And line appearance format, and if I look at that, there's not a lot of fields here. But it allows me to see user ID, device, directory number, and partition. And if I have more than one, it would show me more than one. But the important thing is it gives me the user ID and the DN, the line appearance that's associated with that user. So I'm going to call this associate line appearances for presence. Export line appearances for all primary extensions or for all the devices associated. I'm going to go get both. So if this user has more than one device, all the lines on all of those devices, or if I only want to do association for the primary extension. I'm going to run immediately. And that'll just take a moment to process. So bulk administration tool, let's take a look at my job scheduler. Excuse me. And it's completed. I've exported my line appearance. Just making sure that all the records worked. So let's go get the file and download. And here we go. I'm going to open that in Notepad++ just to show you the data. If I had more than one phone or more than one directory number, I would see additional columns, directory number 1, partition 1, etc. Now, here's the beautiful part. How do I go about getting that to do line appearance association? Well, it is so easy, you are going to be amazed. I'm adding a new file. I'm going to upload the file I just downloaded. And what am I doing? User line appearance. And I am updating based on a custom file, this one I just downloaded. And then I just do it. I just run it. Oops, users, line appearance, update line appearance. I'm updating it on the custom file I just uploaded. And this allows me not only to update line appearances, but I could also disassociate lines if I wanted to make sure that I had 0 line appearance associations, and run immediately. And that is all there is to it. I love that they made that particular process so easy. Let's go in and check our user. I went and looked at Andre Blanc. He's at the top of the list, so it makes him easy because he'll get processed first. And ta-da. So all I had to do for that particular process was export and then just redo an import. But this is the power of the bulk administration tool. It allows you to make these sorts of bulk changes really, hopefully pretty simply, other than my mix up on the description field there. All right, any questions about that stuff so far? Everybody good? Any questions about updating users like the home cluster checkbox or updating the line appearance for users? Everybody good? Okay. Another example, If you need to set up ownership of the phones, we saw that with the custom file format. Again, I need to make sure that's working, but that custom file format allows you to edit your data. So the last thing I wanted to show you then is to walk through the process of setting up speed dials or abbreviated dials for a set of phones. Now again, for those of you who attended yesterday's session, I walked through this at the end of the session, sort of into the Q&A time, but I'm going to walk through it because I meant to do that today. So as it happens, I had a student ask me how to do exactly that a little while ago. So I wanted to show you. Phones, lobby, export. Where's the file? I didn't throw it out, did I? Let's see. Where else would it be? That's line appearance stuff, the all users. I had it on this PC yesterday. There we are. Ha! I knew it was there. I'm not sure where I put the file, but here it is. So the process is a bit complicated, but it shows you how you can go about adding data of all sorts for a set of phones. And again, this gives me the ability to do this for a set of phones. One of the things this is going to also allow me to do is add slots for speed dials, which I do not necessarily have. If you just do an export of all your phones, and you want to add 20 abbreviated dials to everybody, the original phones don't have that. So one of the things I would need to do for all of the records is give them slots for the 20 abbreviated dials so that then I could go populate it. And this is the process for doing that. It feels a little convoluted, but it really does work. So let's take a look. Step one, we're going to create a phone template. And what we're going to do is do the absolute bare minimum. Now, this is phone model specific. So if you have 3 or 4 different phone models, you'd have to do these in groups anyway. And like everything else that is not a full-on import-export, you can only do 1,000 records at a time anyway. So you'll want to do this in batches. And in the phone template, all I'm going to do is have just the required fields. When you build a template, you have to, when you build any kind of phone, you have to have a SIP profile and a device security profile and a device pool and all that. But when I export the existing data for the existing fields, I'm going to include all of those fields. So even if I have, let's say, the so-called wrong information in my template, like device pool, I might leave at default, but device pool is going to be populated in the data I'm going to import. Therefore, the original information is going to override what's in the template. How can I use BAT to change the owner from user to anonymous? So you're not talking. Let me get back to this. So you're saying, how do I change owner to anonymous and then blank this out, right? That's the kind of thing, that's what you're asking for? Right. Let's see. I'm not sure. That might be a export, that might be one of those fields you can only work with if you export all of the phones using import export. I might use that as a as my example tomorrow. So yeah, owner's not here, just owner user ID. So changing that from an owned phone to an anonymous phone, you can't do this way. I'm going to be doing a full-on import-export later on today at 1 p.m. Mountain, 3 p.m. Eastern, and I will use this as an example. That's an excellent example. I like that because you have a set of phones that are, conference room phones or something like that, and you'd like to change that in bulk, or for licensing purposes, you have a bunch of phones that are currently anonymous phones because that's how they got built, but you need to add, so you need to change that field from anonymous to owner and add the owner ID. I like that. So I will do that this afternoon if that's okay. Okay, where were we? Oh yes, so I'm hoping you're saying in your chat that that's groovy. Okay. All right, where was our thing? All right, so here we go. So this is what we're going to do. So I'm going to create the template with all the only required fields as minimum as possible. I'm going to make sure in my file format that I have all of those fields listed so that the original information does not get overwritten. And then at the bottom of that file format, I'm going to be adding slots for speed dials. So let's go start by doing that. I'm going to go to phone template. And I'm going to add a new phone template. And this is, again, going to be on a per phone model basis. Let me grab my 8845s, for instance. And I'm going to call my template add 20 speed dials. And again, only required fields. Device pool is required. I have to put something there. Phone button template is there. I have to put something there. 8845. Common phone profile already has the thing. I need to specify a device security profile and a SIP profile. But that's it. You want to have as little as possible. Save. So that's step one. We have created our phone template. Next thing we're going to do is create a file format that has those fields in it. So phone file format, create file format. And my list is, I have it up on my other computer here. I want to have, I'm going to call this the add 20 speed dial file format, just to keep everything straight. And I always need device name. I always need description. Description is one of those fields, by the way, that you can edit if you want to. I need to make sure that I add the device pool information in so that the template doesn't override it. I need to make sure that the phone button template is added because I don't want what's in the template to override. Device security profile. By the way, I'm tapping the first digit, like I'm about to tap an S. That brings me down to the S's. Right, so those are the fields that were in my template. I'm not going to have, leave all other fields alone, right. Down here, I'm going to say maximum number of speed dials. I'm saying I'm adding 20, so I'm just going to add 20, and I'm going to save. So now I've got the template, and I've got the file format that's going to include the fields I want. I am now going to export phones, specific details. Which details am I exporting? Oh, this is where I get the file format that I just did. So which phones? I want to say device type contains 8845. Although truth be told, since we're doing phone model specific fields, you could probably do all of them anyway. Next. And my file format, here's my add 20 speed dial format. There's the other format I did before. And I'm going to call this export phones to add speed dials. Run immediately. Submit. Ooh, that's fun. There we are. Let's go back. What is it? Wow, that was interesting. So bulk administration tool. Let's see if our job is done. Still processing. So the earlier file format that I was about to use to make the name-related fields consistent, the process I'm showing you right now is exactly the same. I don't know if you noticed, but when we looked at export via a custom file, like what fields do I want to export, that file format that I created was listed there, and that is how we would do that. I just had a moment. So you would export based on that template, edit the information, then import. So I am going to download that file. Export files to add speed dials, download. And we are going to open this. Actually, I think if I make this a CSV file in the first place, it'll open properly, I think. Yes, okay. So here we go. Now notice I already added a speed dial when I did yesterday's. Each speed dial has a speed dial number and a speed dial label. So what I would want to do if I was going to add another speed dial is make the speed dial some kind of number. I'm going to make it 5551234. And I could make them different, obviously, for the different fields. And then what do I want to have for the label? We'll call that front desk. There we go. And save. So now that I have the data in there, now I can insert the phones, and it'll overwrite just those columns that I added in. So next thing I need to do is upload the file that I have just edited. So I'm going to add new. I'm going to be inserting phones specific details. Are we really inserting phones? No, we're really updating phones. I wish that Cisco would change that particular menu item, but this is what we got. So I'm going to go get the file I just downloaded. Where'd it go? It's on my desktop. Oh, there we are. Open. And I'm going to insert phones, insert phones specific details. And then run the job. Insert phones. I am going to go get the phones information I just uploaded. I'm going to go get the template name that I just created. I'm going to override the existing configuration. And with regards to speed dials, do I want to delete the existing speed dials before I add new ones? Maybe, it depends on what you need to do, and run the job. And once we do that, our 8845 phones should have an additional now third speed dial going to that front desk. Let's check the status of the job. Great, so it's in process here. Let's go see if it's showing up in any of the records yet. These are done in alphabetical order by device name. So if I find the first 8845, it should have been in the one that's one of the ones that was already processed. So those are my CSF devices. Here's an 8845. And here we go. Here's the two speed dials that were already there, and here's the new one that we just created. Now it says 555-1234 here, but notice that that label, so what it's going to actually show up physically on the phone, does say front desk. So there we go. This is what I wanted to show you today, which was how do I go about, wrong file, excuse me, which is how do I go about using custom file formats to edit text-related sorts of fields. So doing things like line appearances, because that's going to be unique to each user. What do I do about the home cluster checkbox? What do I do about things like speed dials or abbreviated dials? Or in our example, the description fields. So that's that. What I'm going to do now for anybody who would like to stick around, I'm going to go run past the top of the hour. The top of the hour is supposed to be the end of our session. But I'm going to go ahead and run past the top of the hour, and we're going to go through the process of the description fields like I was talking about, because I want to make sure that I show you that. Now that I remember my little senior moment there, I want to go fix it. So if for those of you who are not going to be sticking around, thank you. I hope you come again. Let's do the custom file format for the description fields. I am going to go back in here, and the step I missed was exporting my phone's specific details based on the file format that I had just created for the description fields. And let me get just some of the fields. Let me just get the, let's see, device type contains 8811. Is it 8811s? I think that's what I made. Yeah, that's just 10 files. I don't want to mess up too much of my stuff here. Next. '8811s are all lobby phones, by the way, as I recall. So I'm going to call this lobby phones, maybe. File format, all name-related fields. Submit. I have a 8811 template here, so I should be good to go there. Oh, let's go get my file. Here we are. And if I open this in Notepad++, you see all the data. I'm going to turn it into a CSV file, just because it makes it easier to deal with in Excel. Here we go. And so I don't want Rachel Jefferson desk phone. I want to call this Rachel Jefferson lobby phone. Or I want to call this Rachel Nile kitchen phone. Right, but the point being that each of the fields can be unique. I'll call this Rachel Evergreen lobby phone also. And maybe the owner's using, maybe it's not Rachel Jefferson anymore, maybe it's Rachel Mahoney, that's me, right? Well, if I change that, I'm going to also need to change the line description. I'm going to need to change the alerting name. I'm going to need to, change the ASCII alerting name. Oh, I guess I didn't have that populated. And then the display name. Now, the only reason I'm not changing the owner is because there is no R Mahoney user account. But you can see that I'm making text changes, and I'm making it to a lot of them. This allows me to visualize like the description field, and then I can make it all consistent. It would take a bunch of typing, but I'm doing it in an Excel spreadsheet instead of trying to do it by hand on the phones. All right, save. Now I am going to upload the file I just created. There we are. And I'm going to be doing phones, insert phone specific details, just like we did before. Bulk administration tool, and I'm going to insert phones. Yeah. And override that it's existing. This should run. I hadn't done it with the 8811s before, so hopefully I didn't mess this up again. And to that, by the way, I've been doing Call Manager since 3.05, so I've been doing this stuff for 20 years. And as you can tell, there's so much to know, I even lose track of how to do things. So I highly, highly, highly encourage you always to do a test run, then try starting to do things in bulk. Get your process down first. Let's take a look. Oh, yep, number of records processed, number of records failed is 0. All my records went, so I should be okay. So I should have now a phone that has the description of Mahoney. Let's see, phone. I think it was Rachel Jefferson's phone, if I'm not mistaken. And I'm going to do a search where the description contains Mahoney. And there we go. The changes I made are now there. And if I look at the directory number associated with this phone as well, those fields will also have been changed. Ta-da. And everything else, all the other fields, are all the same as they were. So we've done everything else we need to do. All right, that is our session for today. Oh, wow, I did get it in before the top of the hour, go figure. I'm going to stick around for another 10 minutes or so if anybody has any questions. Otherwise, I will see y'all at 3 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Mountain Time for using import-export. Has been a pleasure.